how about we go ahead and get started? Sound good? All right. So, I am Gilbert Valdez. I am the mental health first responder in the City of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County. I am employed with HopeWorks, and today what I'm going to be speaking with you all about is this program that we have in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it. Something called the Mobile Crisis Teams in Albuquerque. Has anyone heard about mobile crisis teams? Okay. Cool. Let's switch it up a little bit, okay? So instead of raising your hand if I ask a question, and if it applies to you, I want you guys just to snap. Okay. So, or if you hear something you like in the presentation, go ahead and snap. A little more interactive feedback. I'll know if you fall asleep because you're not going to be snapping. So let's practice. Ready? 1, 2, 3, snap. I like the auditory piece of that, right? You know other people are raising their hands. I'm Gilbert again. I've been in the field for 10 years. I graduated from the gem of the Southwest Eastern New Mexico University. I got some degrees there. I've worked all over the state, you name it, Taos, Clovis, Santa Rosa, Moriarty, Edgewood, Los Lunas. I worked in all the little cities. I worked in Espanola, Grants, floated around. I wanted to be well-rounded as a counselor. And all of that has led me to here, being in Albuquerque, working for HopeWorks, doing what I'm doing today. I was hoping to get a little bit of sleep last night, but I worked swing shifts doing mobile crisis. And at the end of my shift last night, we got a call, a 911 call, of a young lady jumping out of her mother's vehicle, heading back to Belen on the highway, and we rushed over there. She was threatening to kill herself, and then she was actually running in traffic. So we went over there, and we detained the young lady. She's an adult female. She just had a kid 6 months ago. She's dealing with some postpartum depression, and she has been having depressive symptoms for a long time. She held a knife to her wrist that morning, to her neck that morning. They brought her to the hospital. She had back pain. They treated the back pain. But she didn't get a psychiatric evaluation. The behavioral health saw her. And so there we are on the side of the highway. You know, it's dark. I'm glad all the rain had already passed. I wouldn't want to be talking to anyone in the rain. And it seemed like that lady needed to go to the hospital after speaking with her and doing an assessment there on the side of the highway. And so I got home about midnight 30, and I finally jumped in bed, and I was praying that I was actually not going to just be up all night thinking about the presentation today, right? So I think I got a little bit of sleep. So if I fall asleep, someone mention. Let's jump into this. Every day when you turn on the news or wherever you get your media, you see headlines such as these. A father asks why they have to kill him. In shooting a mentally ill man, officer follows protocols, police say. 2 officers are charged with assault of mentally ill man. And they go on and on and on. Just recently in our community, if you've been paying attention to the news, there's been headlines from the Albuquerque Journal, KOB, KRQE, as well. So what are the objectives of this workshop? This is designed to help you all recognize the efforts of mental health first responders to prevent the tragedy of suicide, increase treatment, and decrease incarceration of mentally ill individuals. Summarize the who, what, where, how, and why of mobile crisis teams, integrate MCT into your thinking and into your practice, and utilize mental health first responders appropriately. Dr. Jankowski was talking about you all being in the trenches. I feel like what I'm doing currently is really boots on the ground in the trenches, and we're going to talk about all that. So I'm going to review with you just really quick some data from the Albuquerque Police Department, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department. As you probably know, every time a 911 call is made, they are tracking that, right? They're categorizing it, they're prioritizing that, and they have some fancy dandy graph statistics And one of the things that they track is something they call behavioral health calls, or BH calls. You'll see it on these. Okay? So if you see BH up here, that means behavioral health. Anything that has a behavioral health component, someone's suicidal or homicidal, someone's calling in saying, my loved one is having a panic attack, my loved one is running in the street, my 9-year-old son is beating me up, and someone comes, he's diagnosed with X. They're going to code that as a behavioral health call. Okay? And this is going to kind of set the stage for how big is the problem or the issue that we're trying to mitigate and resolve with mobile crisis, or mental health service responders. As you can see here from the far left, 2014 behavioral health calls all the way to 2018. In 2017, I want to draw your attention to the number there. That 7,690 behavioral health calls were made to 911 in 2017. Can you guys see the trend? Right, going up. The data for 2018 was just as of October of 18, so they weren't able to kind of complete that. We probably have that data now. But as you can see, there's a lot of calls for service made to 911 where police officers respond, firefighters respond to someone having a mental health crisis. On this graph here, this is the number of APD behavioral health related calls by final call type in year. And so that's 7,690 we just looked at. Here is suicide calls. In the year 2017, there were 4,870 behavioral health related calls that were just people saying, I don't want to live anymore. I took pills. I want to kill myself. Maybe someone called 911 on their loved one saying they're posting on social media saying, I don't want to be alive. Or I wrote a suicide note, something like that. That's a lot, right? 63% of the behavioral health related calls in 2017 were people that are so depressed. They don't want to live. Very sad. Just one more graph and we'll jump into the board of the presentation. One of the things that we're trying to prevent not only suicide, the tragedy of suicide in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, but we're also trying to, I like to think, prevent something else that's been on the rise. In 2016 here, murder-suicides were up. Right? So here's murder-suicides throughout the years, and they've been increasing. That's just 2016 data. So I like to think every time we go out with someone who's saying, I'm suicidal, we're also preventing potentially a murder and a suicide. And on some of these calls, that's been the case, right? Someone's really escalated, my partner just left me, I'm unmedicated, I don't know what to do, I have a firearm, I'm thinking about hurting that person. And you're trying to feel like it's pretty cool. So when you guys think about a mental health professional, what do you think about? When I ask you guys, what do you think about when I talk about a mental health professional and a police officer were in the same car together? What do you think about? What are those conversations like? I like to be a fly on the wall there. I like to think in terms of movie posters, and I made this one for you guys. Have you seen this movie coming to a theater near you? Where are our weapons? Mel Gibson and Siggy Roy. I didn't intend to Photoshop this so well where it looks like Freud is holding the gun. Freudian slips, I guess. I'm sure Freud would have something to say that that's a fallacy. If you've read an interpretation of dreams. So as you can see, I'm just being funny here, but it's really interesting. My partner is a detective with the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, and my other partners have field patrol officers with APD. And the conversations that we have writing together has been fascinating. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But the intersection between mental health and law enforcement has become more prevalent, right? Let's just wait. There's going to be a news story in the next 20 minutes, I guarantee it. And so it's about time that we're doing this. I'll talk about the history of this thing called mobile crisis in first responder, let's just define terms. This is a public safety employee or volunteer whose duties include responding rapidly to an emergency, but not limited to, obviously, law enforcement officers, firefighters, and an emergency medical service provider. I guess mental health first responders will fall in that last category. This definition is from the Department of Homeland Security, so I think it's pretty credible. My partner and I, his name is Patrick. Everyone say hello, Patrick. He's here. I'm going to tell him you guys did that. We were getting coffee in between calls. We were near Kirtland Air Force Base, and a woman in camo green walked over to us. She said, "I see uniforms. You guys are my people. Who are you?" We sat down with her. We had coffee with her. She was a high-ranking Canadian Air Force officer, and she was saying, "Hey, you know what? We have mobile crisis in Canada too." Wow, I didn't know that. That's amazing. But we were getting some recognition at some of these other providers and other agencies. So what is a mobile crisis team? It's a mental health expert and an officer who ride together in the same vehicle, and they co-respond to emergency 911 calls. Mobile crisis teams were created through a partnership between Bernalillo County Behavioral Health Initiative, BHI, Albuquerque Police Department, APD, and the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, ECS. And the agency I work for, I'm employed with, HopeWorks, previously Seymour. The co-responder model is evidence-based. There's research on this type of model throughout the nation and internationally. During graduate school, I never had a class on the intersection between law, legal, or criminal justice even, and mental health. There's a gap there, right? You guys agree with me on that? In 1991, the Los Angeles Police Department, they started this co-responding model, something called a mental evaluation unit, MEU. It's like when their police department in Los Angeles, they said, you know what, we need someone specialized that goes out with police when there's a behavioral health emergency. So they had clinicians writing with law enforcement. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, they did some research on mental health first responders in units, police units like the MEU, and they found that 60%, MEU programs reduced the number of rearrests by nearly 60%, dramatically lowering the need for jail and county hospital beds. That's pretty good, right? 60% of the people they're interacting with a behavioral health crisis, they're having less rearrests. They're not sitting in a jail or a county jail getting treatment. They're out. They're using the food, which is good. In the UK, there's programs like this. They're known as street triage teams. In San Diego, just recently, they also had a mobile crisis team called Psychiatric Emergency Response Teams. Arizona has one. Houston has a mobile crisis team with some of their police departments. Washington has some. In Georgia, they have officers and psychiatric nurses that go out. Found one really cool study where it's overseas. Therapists have commandeered an old ambulance and turned it into a therapy office, and they just drive around town. You know, so I was telling my program manager, we need an ambulance. Yeah. In Minnesota, they have a team like this, and some of the preliminary findings from that Minnesota mobile crisis team found that there was a net reduction in costs compared to hospitalizations. $102 per person, and those associated with crime were about $1,080. So the idea is that we're saving taxpayer money. We're saving us all taxpayer money because we're reducing recidivism and also helping these people to get what they need the first time we come into contact with them. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So what are our goals as an MCT program, as a mental health first responders program? That's a lot of goals, right? First one is to improve interactions between law enforcement and people who are suffering from a mental health crisis. 2, improve the outcomes of 911 calls. 3, avoid criminalization of mental illness by preventing unnecessary incarceration increasing recidivism via jail diversion. 4, reduce frequency of police contact between mentally ill and the criminal justice system. 5, increase availability of police officers, Albuquerque Fire and Rescue, Bernalillo County Fire Rescue, and other 911 calls. So they're available for other 911 calls. 6, this is the big one, prevent the use of force by DOs, law enforcement officers. I think I'm here today because unfortunately James Boyd got shot in the foothills. Does anyone know who James Boyd is? 7, that's good, I love it. 7, decrease the costly and inappropriate use of emergency rooms in hospitals. 8, link patients to the least restrictive level of care that is appropriate. 9, treat the untreated. And 10, prevent the tragedy of suicide. I think we're meeting a handful of them. So let's meet the team, shall we? We started last year, February of 2018, with 4 teams. These are the teams here. We have Cheryl and Lance. Lance is the detective with the sheriff's office. Myself and Patrick is the detective. This is Lisa Gallus and Mike Chirillo, and Mylene Miranda and Mark Leclerc. This is kind of the inaugural class of mobile crisis. Isn't that a wild looking bunch right there? What's that? Margaret Thatcher quote, never doubt that a small group of people can what? Something like that. Thank you. Recently, we hired a 5th mobile crisis team. There's such a great need in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County for what we're doing that we hired a 5th team. We're looking for a 6th clinician to join our team, to be a part of our team. Someone who can do crisis work, effectively functions under stress. So let's talk about the clinicians. You have to be independently licensed, social work or mental health. Okay? Why? Because you need a wide breadth of experience, of understanding mental health, co-occurring diagnoses, substance abuse. We're running the gamut on who we're bumping into, their presentations, what's going on, and you need to be able to make decisions pretty quickly. We'll talk about that. A couple of things. I wear a bulletproof vest to work every day. If you have told me in graduate school that I would be wearing a ballistic protective vest, I would have said, no way, right? There's nothing like that right now. That I know. We really want to differentiate ourselves from the officers when we're on scene, on calls, when we dress down, we wear civilian clothes. We have these, we call them fish jackets for some reason, like fishing vests. Because they're made, they look like they're flies on them and stuff. We have resources in those vests and such like that. But when we're on scene, we really want to make sure that people know that we're different from law enforcement. On the back of our vests, it's a really bright blue and teal label. It says clinician on it. Has anyone seen us out in the world yet? You have? Great. And there's a couple of features that we have that why we're wearing these things. This thing right here is a tourniquet. And we've been trained by the law enforcement agencies to administer self-aid if we're in a crisis, if we get shot for some reason, we're involved. Again, we're driving around with police. Some people don't like police. We're trained in buddy aid, so if my partner gets shot, I know how to put a tourniquet on his legs or his limbs. In my vest, I have what's called a chest seal. So if we get shot in the thorax, we can apply that so we don't suffocate because our lungs are filling up with blood and air and such. What else? This is a picture from our annual HopeWorks meeting. We were representing mobile crisis. Here's a picture with, we were doing what's called reality-based training with some of APD's civilian team called COAST. They provide resources to a lot of homeless people, other people in need. There are other civilians that work with Albuquerque police, and this was really interesting. It's kind of like stress inoculation training. It's kind of scary. There's like fake guns and gunshots, and you're having to perform while all this chaos is going around. It's not easy. And I hope, and this is the thing, I hope I never need to use my vest or my tourniquets. I hope I never need to use any of that training, but I'd rather have it than not need it. So what about the police officers? our partners here. Again, we talked about the gentleman from the sheriff's department. They are detectives, which means they have a little bit different of a skill set in terms of what they do. Detecting crimes, preventing crimes, and the officers, they're kind of like field patrol officers. They're doing traffic stops, they're investigating crimes, stuff like that. But we're also now a part of this special mobile crisis unit. As you can probably imagine, working with two different governmental agencies has been a little bit difficult with all their bureaucracies and all that, but it's working out. We're ironing out some details. APD has this on the back of their car. You may see it driving around, mobile crisis teams. The vehicle that we drive in, me and my partner, it has no decals, no logos. You can't even notice that it's a police vehicle. It's completely blacked out. And we have a half cage. So imagine half of your back seat, one is just like a cage in there. And that's for us helping to transport people. We have some backup officers. This is Haley. She's one of our backup officers. And some of our officers have already made the news and some of the things that they're doing in terms of trying to support the rest of the system and diverting people, taking pressure off Albuquerque fire and rescue, stuff like that. As you can imagine, also, officers, at least some of the ones that I've met, they're very type A personalities, very paranoid people, some of them, and rightfully so, from their line of work. But they come from a very diverse background. I'm a strong believer that diverse teams make strong teams. Different ideas, different philosophies, and trust me, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but for the most part, we can make it work. I like to tease my partner. I said he's just a glorified Uber. He drives me around, 5 stars every time. Feeds me sometimes, and he's also my bodyguard. I have private security on calls. His #1 priority is safety for everyone involved, but also for me. So he's driving me around, and he's making sure that nothing bad is happening to me. So I like to joke that I'm making these things. He's getting custom. So what's the process? The dispatch, an emergency call is made to 911. Last night it was, my daughter is attempting to jump out of the car. I pulled over on the side of the road on the highway. Earlier yesterday there was a call, a 30-year-old woman's 8-year-old son who was developmentally delayed, called 911 8 times and hung up. So deputies go out there to see what's going on. It might be an emergency, right? Someone's hanging up 911, you just don't call 911, right? His mother was high on methamphetamines, acting erratically, saying she wanted to kill herself. She had attempted suicide 2 days previous by trying to hang herself with a rope in her closet. They called us out there. There's no legal charges there. She doesn't have methamphetamines on her or any paraphernalia. Police can't do anything. So it's a mental health issue or it's a substance abuse issue. So they call us. The call is dispatched to the officers. Again, calls are being prioritized, and the highest level of priority is a priority 911 call, and that's because there's potential for great bodily harm, or loss of life, or death. That's when you see police running lights and sirens through the city because they're trying to get there to prevent something really bad from happening. There was a call the other night, 2 nights ago, where there was a young man who, his mother was calling 911. He went up to his mom and said, "Mom, where's our gun? I want to kill myself." She called 911. And so police are running lights and sirens. Anytime there's a firearm involved, it's always a priority one. Those are so lethal, right? And then again, some calls that we respond to have some component of mental health. What's important to know is, again, we're trying to effectively manage resources. For just a 911 call, let's pick the young man who said to his mom, I want the gun. They're sending 2 officers. With the gun, they're sending more officers. So we'll just do this. 2 officers, 1 fire truck with 4 firemen, that's 6 people. 2 fire paramedics, that's 8 people. 2 ambulance paramedics, that's 10 people on a call, a 911 call, for someone that says, I just want to kill myself. And if we show up, that's 12 people, that's 2 more people added to the mix. That's a lot of resources, right? And potentially, not all of those people have to be there. No one's gotten hurt, right? No one actually has any injuries, so medical doesn't necessarily need to be there. There's no legal charges, potentially criminal charges, so police technically don't have to be there anyways, right? There's nothing criminal that they can do legally. But that's what they do. Let's see what else. Mobile crisis teams, we respond only to priority 1 calls. So we're going to the hottest call, we call them hot call, which is interesting. A lot of those calls, like we were talking about, are people that are threatening suicide, have made plans to commit suicide, have attempted suicide, they're in the process of attempting suicide. You don't go to a lot of completed suicide calls.
I was wondering if, since you're working with the police population, and that there are some statistics that aren't necessarily great for that profession in regard to like domestic violence themselves and going home to their families and kind of victimizing their own families. I'm wondering if there's any statistics about how having a mental health individual going, that there's some sort of lateral teaching and support to our police department.
You're ahead of the game.
Some
You're
training?
ahead of the game.
Oh, okay.
I will speak about that, but
Okay.
That's the hope that we're rubbing off on these people that we're interacting with. A lot of education happens in the car, on scene, and I don't know if you all are aware of this, but nationally, police officers and firefighters and paramedics have a higher suicide rate than the national average. That's not good. The people that are meant to protect us, they're taking their own lives because their job is so difficult. That's what goes into that. My hope is that we're helping people with mental health, our partners' mental health, just by being in the car with them. There's a lot of talking going on. I call it free therapy sometimes, but you can't really do that. I gotta say that. Let's see what else. So prior to our arrival to a call, what we do in the vehicle is we begin an investigation using the law enforcement databases. This is the coolest thing that I have access to or get to witness. My partner is a detective. He has access to all the legal records, all these things in New Mexico, Bernalillo County that he has to access. And safety is such a priority. They want to know the person or the subject, the family that we're going out with, is this the person they say they are? What's their history? Do they have a violent history? Do they have a history of substances? Anyone work with mandated clients, JPO, probation, juvenile probation? Yeah, most of us. This is kind of like the same thing when you get that packet and you're looking through it and you're setting up your appointment and you're like, wow, this person's been through a lot. I know what's going on with them. This is what we're doing in real time. We're getting this information. And I'm privy to this because my partner's staring at this stuff. And it's very helpful because sometimes we'll do an investigation, my partner will do an investigation, and this person has a very long, lengthy legal history, substances, methamphetamine, they've been charged with domestic violence, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. Wow, okay, so we're getting more deputies potentially to go there. And then we get on scene, maybe the person's suicidal, I start my assessment. I start talking to them. Hey, have you ever been charged criminally with anything? Do you ever use substances? No, I've never used substances a day in my life. Now I know you're lying. Right? Or someone tried to get you in trouble and that's what's on your criminal record. There's also an ability to track if they've been sent to the hospital, if they've been involved in any mental illness or mental patient calls. Code 1040, you know, 10 code now, it's kind of weird, it's another language. And so I get to have this information to inform my assessment, to figure out what's the best thing for this person right now. And again, what we're trying to do before we get there is we're trying to figure out what kind of intervention, level of intervention is necessary. Are all the people that are there required to be there? So what does a dispatch look like? This is a picture of what's called a computer-assisted dispatch. You call 911, the dispatch person is typing in all your information you're giving them. They're sending that information to a computer in the officer's vehicle, and it looks like this. different versions. We'll look at. Basic information, right? This is what the person called in and reported. The calling party said he's in the Mesa. Go to the top of the road and run into his white van, 4 miles in. Deep into the Mesa to find this gentleman. The calling party said he wants to kill himself. He said he was trying to kill himself by not eating or drinking. The sergeant said, okay, go do that. So clinicians in the room, if you were going to send someone to the hospital based on the information provided, do you think that's enough to send them to the hospital? Snap your fingers if you're in agreement with that. That's not enough information, right? We want to give this person their due diligence and see what's the totality of the circumstances. What are all the factors? That gentleman eventually went to the hospital when we spoke with him. He was intoxicated. He had pine crystal palace. He was homeless. He was camping in the Mesa. He'd been homeless for about 7 months. He's a very successful person previous to that. Something really bad happened in his life and kind of declined and decompensated. And this was not his first time wanting to kill himself. He didn't eat or drink in a couple of days. So if you're keeping tally, you're checking off risk factors in your head. And he got care. So different types of behavioral health crisis calls that we're responding to. It can be persons that is having a psychiatric crisis. They're having a panic attack. They feel like they're dying. They're running in the street. Suicidal ideation. Someone's just thinking about hurting themselves, taking their life, not wanting to be alive. Homicidal ideation. Usually when there's a school shooting in the media, in the next couple of weeks, we get a lot of calls to schools, and we're doing risk assessments for kids that are saying, I'm going to shoot the school too. I'll shoot up my school. I wish that would happen to our school. And we're coming across some kind of scary kids, unfortunately. They are making plans, but again, we're there to try to prevent bad things from happening, which is really interesting. People that are having psychotic display of psychosis, they're very symptomatic. They're having a severe loosening of associations, delusional beliefs, concrete delusional beliefs that they're acting on, command auditory hallucinations of a voice is telling me to kill people, hurt myself. I know it's the neighbors. I can hear them when I'm in my garage. They better not come over here. I'm afraid Girl Scout is going to come knocking on their door and say, would you like some Samoas? And they think that's the person who they're hearing. Right? So that's the concern. We're trying to prevent bad things from happening. That psychosis can be methamphetamine-induced, other drugs-induced. It could be organic. We've come across some people who are just having UTIs and they're acting very erratically. We go to a handful of elderly patients who the sun goes down and they're symptomatic. They're calling 911 multiple times. Someone's taking the copper out of my AC. Can you guys come check? Man, we've been out here 3 times tonight. There's no one out there. Doesn't look like anyone's on your premises. What do you do with those people? We have an answer for that right now. Typically what the police will do is there's no criminal investigation happening. No one's really out there. They can't do anything. Are out there? Are you safe? Great. Call back if you feel like you're unsafe, and that person's calling back an hour later. And they don't recall that they called 3 times already, right? So we're trying to help those people as well. We're going out with some people who are just having severely dysregulated behavior. I feel like a lot of kiddos fall into that category. People that are threatening or having violent behavior. And maybe the person has lost the will to live or the capacity for self-care, something we call great passive withdrawal. Deputies and officers can also call us. So when we're on duty, they can just call us and say, hey man, I'm on this call. This is what I know. This person is X, Y, and Z. There's no legal charges. We think there's something up. What do we do? Maybe we consult with them. Maybe we go in with them and do an assessment. MCT is not a mobile crisis teams are not a guaranteed response if you call 911. Again, we only have 4 or 5 teams. We're expanding to 6. We may be tied up on a call. We may be busy. We may be in a meeting. So if you call 911 and say, my mentally ill loved one, we want that clinician person to go out and speak with them. Sorry, they're not available. Right? Or they'll just do their standard response. They'll send officers. They'll triage the situation, and hopefully they'll call for us. My hope, and I'll jump ahead, my hope is that we have so many mental health first responders, every time you call 911, you have the potential to get someone there guaranteed. So once we're on scene, the deputies, the officers arrive, they ensure the scene is secure, they're making sure the person in question doesn't have any weapons on them, doesn't have access to anything dangerous. They pat them down, backup officers are present, they have safety protocols and procedures, they didn't know any of this stuff, that's why they're working with police. Because they want to make sure that everyone's safe, the patient, the family, myself, themselves, everyone's safe. Safety is a priority. Once we arrive on scene, if it's appropriate, the clinician will assess the patient, kind of do a biopsychosocial assessment, we do some risk assessment, and we triage the situation. I introduce myself as such. My name is Gilbert Valdez. I'm a therapist. I'm not a police officer. I'm not a police officer. I want people to know that I'm not looking for criminal charges on you. What I'm here for is I'm here to help you. I have to say that sometimes. I'm just here to help, man. I'm just here to help, and I help. Collateral information is collected from friends and family as needed. We want as much information to inform what is best for the patient. Sometimes, as you all know, people will deny or minimize their symptoms. That wasn't threatening, so I held a knife to my neck. Everyone does that. That's not normal, sweetie. And so we'll talk to the family, say, no, they attempted suicide in December. They did this, they did that. Wow, more risk factors, more risk. If the family of the patients are on scene, the clinicians can provide mental health first aid, crisis resources, psychoeducation, referral. I really feel like we're kind of doing what Levine and Vanderkolk talk about and getting families back to like a homeostasis in these kind of traumatic situations. If anyone in here has ever called 911, you know it's kind of traumatic having the lights and sirens, the people are in your space, and God forbid something bad is happening, but I'm trying to mitigate some of those things. Again, we're trying to differentiate ourselves from the officers. I have this big beard, and people, they know I'm not a police officer right when I get on scene. They're like, okay, this guy's a little bit different. I start talking about feelings and stuff, and they're like, all right, you're cool. Some guy the other week said, you have a really great aura about yourself. I said, thanks, man. The police, you know, they are clean shaven. They have like policies about them. They have facial hair, stuff like that. They have their garb on. You know they're very distinctly a police officer. Let's see. Sometimes when I've introduced myself as a therapist, not a police officer, some people have said this verbatim. Oh my God, thank you so much. I've been asking for help this whole time. The first time they've sent someone to help. They have crying and tears. It's just a different experience. I like to say it's a softer approach to policing. We're really helping these guys out. After the assessment, a final disposition is made, just like anyone. Does anyone work in the hospital? Okay, thank you. One of three dispositions can be made. There's more, but these are the three big categories. The patient is left in the community. They're posing a very low risk. They have so many protective factors that mitigates their risk. We're developing safety plans with those families, referrals. The person is arrested. There is a felonious charge that cannot be overlooked or diverted from jail. Hospitalization, sometimes people call 911 and say, I want to kill myself, come pick me up. We'll go out there and we'll pick you up and give you a free ride to the hospital. Or involuntarily, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Hospitalization is indicated. We'll take the patient, they'll be either transported by an ambulance, by other officers, by ourselves, to an emergency department, and a warm handoff is given to the medical staff. What police are notorious for is taking someone to the hospital, dropping them off, and leaving. And the staff are like, why are you here? The police came to my house, they brought me here. No information is shared. What's really cool about being a mental health first responder is I get to debrief the medical staff in all the medical jargon, right? And all the psychology jargon. They get all that stuff. Individuals with serious mental illness who have committed major crimes represent about 2% of the 8.2 million individuals with a severe psychiatric disease in the United States. This is a small segment of the total population, and research shows that without treatment, these individuals are at a heightened risk of being rearrested. You've all heard of the revolving door phenomenon: jail, hospital, hospital, or maybe it's just hospital, maybe it's just jail. We're trying to find those high utilizers in the community and get them out of that cycle for a whole number of reasons. So let's talk about involuntary hospitalization. We have a great tool at our disposal, and we'll talk about that tool. If a person that we're assessing is suicidal and they don't want to go to the hospital, maybe someone called 911 on themselves, someone called 911 on them, and we show them, we assess them and say, hey, you know what, after talking with you, I don't feel comfortable leaving you in the community because you're saying you can't be safe. I think it's best we go to the hospital. That person can say, I don't want to go to the hospital. Right? We all have freedoms and rights. What do? Has anyone been in their clinical practice and someone's suicidal and you're like, I think they need to go to the hospital, and then they try to talk you out of it? What do? More than likely, you're going to call 911, right? They're going to come to your clinic, your practice, and they're going to do what officers do. I'm here to tell you that I'm 911 now, somehow. When you guys call 911 because someone's suicidal, we show up. And I'm glad we're showing up, clinicians, expert mental health professionals, because I was a supervisor for an agency in Rio Rancho, and a young lady was having suicidal ideation. We called Rio Rancho Police Department. The police department showed up, and they do what they do. And the gentleman was taking notes, interviewing the young lady, a teenage lady, and his facial expressions were doing this, and she's talking about all the morbid things she's thinking about. He's going, oh, wow, oh my God, oh. And the shame that he was shaming her with his facial expressions. And if I was that young lady, I wouldn't want to talk to you. So we had some of those experiences. Anyone had those experiences with police? Anyone? Yeah, some of us. So we're sending people to the hospital, sometimes involuntarily. Everyone in here, this applies to you if you're a clinician, a social worker. It's in the New Mexico Mental Health Code, NM State Statute 43-1. In 2013, this thing was updated that provided and gave authority and responsibility to us all with independently licensed, associated with CSAs or mental health clinics, the power to send people to the hospital involuntarily. Let's read it. A physician, a psychologist, or a qualified mental health professional licensed for independent practice who is affiliated with a community mental health center or core service agency has certified that the person, as a result of a mental disorder, presents a likelihood of serious harm to himself or herself or to others, and that immediate detention is necessary to prevent such harm. Such certification shall constitute authority to transport the person. Officers know this as a pickup order, because if a doctor, one of us, writes one of these on our patients, because we're concerned that they're going to hurt themselves, hurt others, that'll get to the officers, and they will go to that person's house, pick them up, and take them to the hospital. There's a bunch of things in there, like they can't actually bust into their house. The person has to voluntarily want to come out. I'm not coming out. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. We're coming back. We've seen that. These things, these certificates for evaluations have a 72-hour shelf life, and that's rightfully so. Someone needs to just be acute, off their baseline, and be better in a day, right?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Does this apply? Like I work in a detention center, so 10% of our folks are chronically mentally ill, 90% of substance abuse. So we have individuals there that we're trying to get to psychiatric hospital, but nobody will do this. Everybody's afraid. So is this something I could tell the DA, if I write it up, we can maybe have them evaluated at a psychiatric hospital instead of just sending them always to our jail?
If you are associated with a CSA or the appropriate agency, community mental health center, I think there's some limitations on it, but yes. And now you can send that person to a psychiatric, to the hospital to have a psychiatric evaluation completed and divert them from jail. They're not going to get care there, the best care there.
So then this, if they're in jail now, then if that certificate is there, they can be transported to a psychiatric hospital if I can arrange transportation? Or
I don't think it works. I don't think it works like that. Where if they're already incarcerated, you can write one of these. They'll go take them from jail to the psychiatric hospital. They have legal charges that have to be wrapped up. But as soon as they get out, but again, you want to be able to do your assessment or have some type of appropriate information that you're deeming them as a risk to themselves. Yes, ma'am.
So we work in a prison and the complication is legal. So in that situation, it wouldn't apply because we walk that line, as you know, between the two. So actually, what you have that we don't have available is that you could mention that and ask for some sort of court order. But what they usually fall back on, at least they do in Doñana County, is that you have mental health or behavioral health present in psychiatry and medical, and you're self-contained. Really, unfortunately, we're an island unto ourselves. We're left to deal with that and manage that, and then repeatedly, because as you know, the recidivism.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
I work for the prison and I work for the mental health psychiatric hospital within the prison. And we get a lot of county jail holds. If they're in jail, they send them to MHTC. We assess them and evaluate them, and we also have committees for that.
You know any? I do. Awesome. Yeah, so again, this is kind of for more so, I think, thank you guys for those comments. This is more for, well, all our clients, really, anyone who's we're deeming as a risk to themselves or their others. They're demonstrating dangerousness or potential risk for dangerousness. Yes, ma'am.
Just to clarify this, I came from Maryland where we would sign, those people could sign an emergency petition that would be presented to a judge. Also, family members could do that. Then the person would be picked up and brought to the emergency room for an emergency psych evaluation. But here, these people would go directly to an inpatient unit for a 72-hour period, or how does that work?
Yeah, good question. The language in the certificate for evaluation is just obligating the hospital to do, any emergency department to do a psychiatric evaluation. And the medical staff there, behavioral health staff there will make a determination if they need inpatient. So it's kind of like a funnel, right? We're trying to funnel these people to these people in the hospital, and then they're determining, does this person need admission to an inpatient unit, and then they'll start sending out requests if they determine that. And the doctor will put an involuntary hold on them. They can't leave. These documents, the certificate for evaluations, also known as C3, C-OVs, it's basically saying to the hospital, this person's in your care now, they can't leave until they have a psychiatric evaluation. And what's really cool is, especially if people have substances on board, they're stabilizing them medically. They have methamphetamine. They gave the lady B52 yesterday to get her stable, get the methamphetamine out of her system, and then they're doing a psychiatric evaluation when she's more out some of the limitations for law enforcement. Again, I think one of the reasons we're out here is there's a 911 call saying, my son is threatening to hurt himself or hurt other people. Depending on the age, force of transport. But law enforcement, they really need people to demonstrate dangerousness, right, before they can take action. And then that's a criminal charge. It sucks. It's kind of like saying, we're going to wait for something bad to happen and we're coming back. And some of us families were like, no, they're going to, oh, can you please do something? And so us being out here, mental health first responders, we're able to kind of do a further evaluation to figure out what is their potential risk of harm, short and long term. So who do we serve? If you live in the county of Bernalillo, you are a client, potentially. If your friend is visiting from New York and they are acutely suicidal, they are our client. That's the county there. There are 74,000 residents in Bernalillo County. Excuse me, 674,000 residents in Bernalillo County. 500,000 of them are centralized in the City of Albuquerque. That's why the City of Albuquerque Police Department is so, they need a lot of police. Here's some of the hot spots for behavioral health calls that we have had in the City of Albuquerque and Bernalillo County. This is Edgewood area. This is approximately Zuni and Central, Zuni and Louisiana. Here's some other areas. Mental illness doesn't care about your race or your gender, any of that stuff. Your socioeconomic status, right? It affects every population. So one of the questions we receive is, can't the officers just do what you guys do as a clinician? Is anyone thinking of that? I have frequently heard my partner say, I couldn't do what you do. I don't think I could listen to people's problems for 8 hours a day or do counseling. And I say to him, I don't think I can do what you do. I don't want to carry a gun. I don't want to have to be put in that situation. I want to protect the law. It's not my shtick. And you know, one of the things that clinicians bring to the table is not only our expertise with counseling skills and some of these things that are very important for forward engaging and empathy, all those things, but we have access to the mental health system, we know of resources. All of you all, we know of your agencies, what you guys do. And police officers, unfortunately, I've heard a handful of them, I've been writing with various police officers throughout my time here, and they'll say, man, you know what? This community has no resources. And I'm like, what? No, you throw a stone and there's a mental health clinic somewhere. Yes, sir.
Can you talk just a little bit about the critical incident unit? Because I know that at least 2 years ago that the APD had a program where pretty much they were looking to get 80% of the police officers trained, or at least having some classes in critical incident management,
Yeah.
So that they could sort of have a little bit more training.
Absolutely. So APD asserts that 100% of their officers are trained in what's called crisis intervention training. That's true. I've been to those classes. And for all of us, what that is just micro counseling skills. Basic micro counseling skills you're teaching law enforcement. And that, what you're talking about, sir, is called the Crisis Intervention Unit. Albuquerque Police and the Bernalillo County Sheriffs, they have specialized units that are just people, typically detectives, that deal with just mentally ill people. Albuquerque Police, they have 14 detectives on their squad. That's a really big squad. It's the largest squad in Albuquerque Police Department because they have a lot of these calls, mental illness calls. So great, thank you for that, sir. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
How can we get this kind of response team in other parts of New Mexico, like Santa Fe or Roswell or any other part of New Mexico?
It's a great question. I think we're starting. I think this is a start. And my hope is that we continue just to reach out and branch out and continue to bring these things to other smaller communities because we need them. And I know Bernalillo County, we have that covered, but even in our surrounding counties, we can't go over there to help them. Right? Someone's in Valencia County or Torrance, and they're having 911 calls that have behavioral health components. We can't respond to those. It's specific in the county. There's all these rules with law enforcement. I'm sorry, I'm not having hold your question, okay? Speaking of the gentleman's question about special training for these law enforcement people, though, in regards to this question is, what's important to know about law enforcement is their first goal is order and control and compliance typically, right? Learning skills like this is kind of like a secondary learning process. I'm not saying there's not some excellent officers out there that are amazing, they have great empathy, they know how to reflective listening like the best of us, but it's a secondary process for them. And so we're really bringing in a specialized expert to do these, to help with these calls. And on the next one, we'll have a graphic to make an example here. Let's see. I already feel like I'm running a little bit behind, so we're going to move forward. So what are some limitations of first responders? We'll cover some of these. This gentleman here was on a roof roof of a local coffee shop here in Albuquerque, and he was threatening police. He was on methamphetamine. He was up on the roof saying, "I can hear my loved ones in the AC units. We need to get them out. They're in there. I can hear them." Is that realistic? Probably not, right? Maybe delusional belief. I think he was high on methamphetamine. And they called out the mobile crisis team, and Mark and Maylene were on scene to try to help de-escalate him, have a peaceful resolution to that call. In 1966, Abraham Maslow said these wonderful words: "I suppose it's tempting if the only tool you have is a hammer to treat everything as if it were a nail." Sometimes the law enforcement people that we're working with, they have this kind of philosophy, right? They really are problem solvers. And they have some tools, laws, state statutes at their disposal to help them solve the problems, but they're limited in what they can do. So are Albuquerque Fire and Rescue, Bernalillo County Fire Rescue, the paramedics that come in the ambulance. They're more medical, right? One of the limitations is this, and I think this is where we do really well. We fill in the gray area. A mother calls 911 saying, "My son is suicidal. He said he wanted to kill himself with a knife. And we're holding him down." There's the police running code, lights and sirens. Fire and rescue are also going there, lights and sirens. They get on scene. No one's hurt themselves. They've de-escalated the situation, and they're talking to the patient. They check their vitals, their heart's okay, they're not hypertensive. They're maybe a little tachycardic, they're anxious. And they're talking to the subject, and they say, "Hey man, did you make those statements?" He says, "No, I didn't say that." There goes their ability to do something, right? There's no legal charges for the police, and fire and rescue, they're more medical, right? They're there to treat the medical. And so they're like stuck. They're stuck in a rock and a hard place. You can't arrest them, there's no charges, and there's nothing medical going on with them. Police are hoping during that assessment, when they're getting their blood pressure checked and their temperature, that something's wrong medically, because then they can force a transport on them for medical reasons. But in the situation where there's no medical, there's no charging, criminal charges, but they can't just leave this person here, right? Would you feel comfortable leaving that situation? My son's saying he wants to kill himself with a knife. We were holding him down. Sorry, there's no injuries, and there's no criminal charges, so we're going to leave. And again, the frustrated families were like, "No, don't leave. This happens every Tuesday," right? So we're freaking out. That's what they call us, and we do really well in that gray area. We can do something there. We're going to assess the mental, psychological, and biopsychosocial level. Let's see, what else? Again, a big part of what we're doing out here is just helping law enforcement to prevent the use of force. This has been huge. If you've been paying attention to the news the last couple of years, there's this thing called the CASA. The Department of Justice came in to Albuquerque Police and said, "You guys are using excessive force." And now there's all these constraints, and their tentacles are all in there, and it's really difficult for police to do something. But it's also a lot of oversight. They want to make sure that no one is using excessive force. And so we're doing our best as mental health first responders to use our words, help de-escalate. And again, we're bringing treatment to these families on scene. It makes a big difference. We have this hashtag fake news. Contrary to popular belief or what the sensationalized media say, police officers don't want to use force. They don't want to have to use their taser or their pepper spray or their service pistols. They don't want to take anyone's life. They don't wake up every day. I hear this constantly. Police officers say, "I don't wake up every day hoping to kill someone today or shoot someone." And I believe them in writing with them. But unlike us, their spectrum of response is talking and using lethal force. We don't have that as therapists, as mental health first responders. I have talking and talking. Getting the hell out of there, right? And using force and hurting people goes against our oath of doing no harm. So here's a person riding in a car that says do no harm, and another person that says, if I need to use that, I have it at my ability. We don't want that to happen. Let's prevent bad things from happening. Let's see. one of the things I've heard from police officers is that, they'll arrive on scene, and just in the situations we were talking about, there's not a criminal charge, there's not a medical complaint, they don't know what to do, but the person obviously is psychiatrically unstable, something's going on, maybe there's substances on board, maybe they have a history of hurting themselves, hurting others. Police often will just err on the side of caution and say, you're going to the hospital anyways. That 43-1-10 statute applies to police officers as well. They can say, hey, I think because of your mental illness, you're a danger to yourself, and they can force a transport to people. Has a little more credibility coming from a clinician, and then we do the warm handoff. And then we do that certificate for evaluation that says you can't leave the hospital until you get a psychiatric evaluation. But police have this ability. And I think that's why, at times, they've misused the hospital services, other services, because they have no other choice. They're not going to leave this person here. And police, they have the philosophy of do something. Right? They're going to do something. And so we're trying to, again, use resources appropriately. And this was in the news most recently. Mother of man shot by Albuquerque police says he battled mental illness. That gentleman was saying he was hearing voices since he was 15, and he took a gun and shot a handful of people at his place of work. So we're out here trying to prevent bad things from happening. And that's difficult to gauge, right, subjectively. How much of a risk are you now and in the future? But with some good tools that help us out. What makes mobile crisis different? Again, teams riding the cruiser together and co-respond to live crisis calls. Some of those other states that I said have mobile crisis models, they don't ride in the same vehicle with police. Maybe they ride in their own vehicle. There's a team in Houston that they get dispatched from police by police, so they ride their own vehicle. They go to the call. Officers, they bring trauma-informed client centered care directly to the patient and their family. Sometimes these calls take very long. I've sat down with families and literally done family therapy to get everyone on the same page for a safety plan, right? Because we're leaving this young lady in the community today. We want to make sure she's going to be safe and everyone's on board. Law enforcement, mental health, medical are on teams together. It's kind of like having an inter-treatment disciplinary team. If you've ever worked in an agency like that, everyone's coming together to collaborate. All right, what do you got? Well, this person's vitals are elevated. What do you got? Well, they have misdemeanor charges. Well, what do you got? Well, they have this diagnosis. They're unmedicated. This is what's going on. What do you think we should do? So we're spreading out the weight of decision making. It's really cool. We have the ability to hold systems accountable earlier in the continuum of care. There's probably a lot here. I think we could probably dive into that. But one of the things I will say is sometimes families will call 911 as a punishment to their loved ones or mentally ill people, and they just don't want them in their house. Yeah, well, if you keep it up, I'm going to call 911 on you. They do. And so, again, police have no other options. Like, well, what are we going to do? This person is saying this. And so now we have come in and we've done a couple of assessments on families and their loved one calling 911 on. And we're like, well, based on our assessment, your loved one isn't severe risk, they're low risk, and we have all these wonderful things. We think they can stay in the community. The disappointed caregiver, like, fine, okay, well, what do you think? What do we need to do? But we have the ability to even prevent families from misusing this service as well, in some cases. Preventing the inappropriate use of resources, like we talked about, via effective resource management. When we show up on scene, there's not a medical issue, there's 10 cops there, so we have the ability to say, hey, thanks guys for showing up, check vitals, you guys can leave. Hey guys, this person's stable, they're not acting erratic, you guys can leave. And now we just have a core set of people who are going to help triage and solve the problem, and not all these people who can be available for the next call. We were asking the paramedic at the hospital yesterday, hey, do you like when we're on scene? And she said, oh, we love it, because we get to go to the next important call, right? Instead of this person who's mentally ill who's having a panic attack, they're going to do the medical workup and stuff, checking vitals. They want to go plug bullet holes and stuff. Well, that's what they got into that for. Cool stuff. Maybe not so cool. We're on duty 365 days a year, 8 to 11 p.m. A lot of data has been reviewed to say when's the most effective time to have mobile crisis teams, and this is the day. For some reason, Mondays and Wednesdays are really busy. Sometimes Fridays. And again, I wonder if there'll be a need for this expanding eventually into like graveyard shifts. I work 1 to 11, 4 days a week, and so I get home pretty late. But that's when the data says we need mobile crisis mental health first responders. And finally, mental health first responders, we fill a gap in the behavioral health system and a bunch of other systems. I've been thinking about this, like what gap are we filling out here? What really is that gap? Sometimes I like to think in bumper stickers. This is what I came up with. When we fill the gap, people don't slip through the cracks. Again, catching them early in their continuum, early in their mental breakdown, get them into services, get them moved up. We're also talking about the limitations of police officers, right? They can't do what we do necessarily. They can be really good at some things we do, but they can't do what we do. We can't do what they do. So I put another bumper sticker, we fill in the gap, we pick up the slack. I'm going to make bumper stickers, okay? So if you see me riding around, honking me, snapping me, I'll pick up. Give you away. How big is the problem in New Mexico? Let's talk about the estimated prevalence of severe mental illness in our state. As you all know, severe mental illness, SMI, is only given to adults, recurring disorders, stuff like that. The Treatment Advocacy Center, they estimate that 53,000 adult New Mexicans have been diagnosed with bipolar affective disorder and schizophrenia. According to these, this is the breakdown. About 2.2%, or an estimated 35,000 New Mexicans have bipolar disorder and been diagnosed with that, and about 1.13 New Mexicans have been diagnosed with schizophrenia, about 18%. And that kind of matches national statistics, about 1%, right? Why is this relevant? The population in New Mexico total is about 1.6 million people. Dr. Efuller Torrey and his working group, the Treatment Advocacy Center, if you've never heard of it, look it up. It's wonderful, wonderful work that they're doing over there. He estimates that about 50% of people in New Mexico with these diagnoses are untreated. That's roughly 25,000 New Mexicans have untreated bipolar affective disorder and untreated schizophrenia. Why is that relevant? People that are untreated with these serious mental illnesses generate a lot of calls for service to 911. They're not calling on themselves typically, right? It's their family that's calling on them. My loved one is acting erratic again. You know, they were up all night, building stuff in the garage. We've been to a handful of houses and calls where people are having such psychotic symptoms that, you know, they pulled all the vents out in their house. They bagged up all the vents and the fans in their house because chemicals are coming through the vents, stuff like that. We want to get these people back into the system, or get to an entrance into mental health, so we can help them out. Does anyone fill out those SMI Medicaid papers? You know what I'm talking about? I haven't done them in such a long time, but when I think about this idea of SMI, it was always that dang paper that you have to submit to Medicaid, right? They co-occurring, or they have the thing. Now, this idea of someone with a serious mental illness is taking on a whole new meaning for me, because I'm looking at it, especially if they're untreated, as an elevated risk factor for harm to self or others. It's no longer this, just this paper I have to submit for reimbursement and all that stuff with funds. But if someone has bipolar disorder and they're untreated and they're symptomatic, oh man, that's more serious to me now for some reason. Rightfully so, I guess. So what's the impact of suicide in New Mexico? Again, remember, 63% of the behavioral health calls that we've responded to for Albuquerque police, or that have been generated behavioral health calls, have been suicide calls. Here's some stats on that. Suicide is the 9th leading cause of death in New Mexico. It's the 2nd leading cause of death for people aged 15 to 44. On average, one person dies by suicide every 19 hours in New Mexico. more than twice as many people die by suicide in New Mexico annually than by homicide. Suicide cost us in 2017 about $500 million in lifetime medical costs, work, losses, about $1.2 million per suicide death. National rankings were number 4. We have 22.49 as a rate out of 100,000 people. That's great, right? That's serious. We're outdone by Wyoming, who's number 3, Alaska, who's number 2, and Montana has the highest suicide rate. They come in at number 1, 28.89 per 100,000 people. I think tying the theme of the conference in here, we are responding to calls throughout the county of all ages of people. One call could be an 8-year-old in the Northwest. The next call can be a 30-year-old in the South Valley. The next could be a 15-year-old in the East Mountains. And so what we're doing is we're really, again, boots on the ground, in the trenches, really working and assessing all ages of people, bless you, sir, and empowering them. So let's talk about our program effectiveness. This is unpublished data. Eventually it will be published. We'll see. We went live last year in a month, February 2018. Close to half the calls that we responded to, again, were suicidal individuals. And that's about 47% of the total number of calls. I'm happy to say that we responded as 4 teams throughout the county in a year and a month to about 2,500 calls. Someone fell asleep. Let's see. The next highest number is about for people that are symptomatic, having psychotic symptoms. And again, that can be substances and aggressive behaviors kind of occurred and kind of washing out after that. But as you can see, suicide is, we're responding to a lot of suicidal subjects in our work. So what are the referral sources? We're tracking that 3 different ways. Are we getting dispatched from 911? You call 911, they say, hey, officers, go here. MCT, go here too. Or we're, that's been about 52%, about 25%, 22% has been from officers who are already on scene assessing the situation. Do we need that resource? Great, let's call them. Hey, can you guys come over here? This is what we got. And finally, just generated calls is another quarter of calls. What's the age groups that we're responding to? The majority is from people aged 25 to 54. That's my Gen Xers, my Zennials, and my Millennials, born 1965 to 1980. Snap if you're in that category. And so we're responding to a lot of adults, right? And if you're an adult white male in this age group, you have statistically a higher risk of hurting yourself. So what's been the disposition on these 2,500 calls that we've had? About half have been people that are transported to the hospital on a certificate for evaluation, or the officer enacted state statute 43-110 and said, we don't need that document, you're going to the hospital, but I can't leave you here, you're a danger to yourself. And about 3.17% of the contacts that we've had with mobile crisis, those people were arrested. Again, I think that's really low numbers. That means that the person did not go to the hospital or get left home. They went to jail because they had a serious criminal charge. And just like our friend here was saying, there is treatment at MDC, the Metropolitan Detention Center. It's called the Psychiatric Services Unit. So when people with mental illness are arrested, they still have an opportunity to get treatment in jail. It's good. I wish that they were just out here getting treatment, but I'm glad that they are. And finally, we'll kind of segue off of this into the next slide. We've left about 33 or a third of the contacts that we've had with people. We've left them in the community with their families, with safety plans, referrals for services, all those things. Which means we diverted from jail, we diverted from the hospital. Right? They didn't need hospitalization for a psychiatric evaluation, and they didn't have any charges. Maybe they did have charges, and we diverted from those as well. So I think we're saving taxpayer money with those, and also we're trying to get people the right level of care instead of doing that revolving door thing. And I think that this also means that we're meeting our goals that we looked at in the beginning of helping police officers to not have any officer-involved shootings, any uses of force, things like that, saving money for the taxpayers, helping our families and communities. So let's see. So we've left about a third of the people in the community on these mental health mobile crisis calls that we've been out to. And it reminds me that we got to take care of the families. We got to assess the families. Let me tell you a story about this guy. Have you guys seen this guy in the internet meetings? This is a photostock model. He's from Hungary. His name is András Arato, and he just takes photostock pictures. Why are we looking at this picture? I was trying to think of what's a good graphic for talking to a family. There was all these photostock, on the internet of a family talking to a therapist, but I didn't hit home for me. I like this guy because this gentleman, András Arato, the name of this meme is Hide the Pain Herald. And it's relevant because a lot of the families that we're going out with, they're trying to be the strong ones for the family. I called 911, I'm holding up this house, we're doing this, and I have a big heart for them because they're hiding the pain. As soon as we get on scene, it happened last night on the side of the road. Wow, man, you look really stressed out. I've been through a lot, he says. Do you see someone for yourself? Start assessing her. What can we offer her as well? Because this young lady that we took to the hospital last night is going to go back into her family system. Nothing changes, nothing changes. So we want to treat the family and assess them as well. And hopefully give them some cathartic benefit, some therapeutic benefit where they have an opportunity to have some type of physiological release as well. Again, families have just started crying because finally someone's here listening to them. The police are like, great, we solved the problem, we're taking this person, good luck. Someone's going to call you, and now we actually get to sit there and do that warm face-to-face, which I really enjoy. Hide the Pain Herald. Let's see. More memes. All right. I'm a millennial, just in case you never knew that. One of the amazing things that we get to do also as mobile crisis therapists is we get to coordinate care in real time. A lot of the times I'll talk to these patients on these calls and I'll say, hey man, who do you see? Who's your providers? Okay, it's doctor this at this clinic, and my therapist is this, or my psychiatrist is this. Great. Can I have permission to speak with that person? I'd like just to call them and let them know that we were out together. Yeah, that's fine. And so we're coordinating care. Has this ever happened to anyone? Well, hold on, before that, let's talk about these. This is called the "this is fine" meme. Me talking to my therapist because I'm self-destructive and a danger to myself. The house is burning and the business is fine. This meme signifies self-denial or acceptance in a very hopeless situation, right? We also got this one, trying to be honest with my therapist, but not so honest that I get involuntarily hospitalized. And it's like you're navigating a minefield, a laser field when you're in session, right? Has this happened to anyone? This has happened to me once or twice. I'm talking with my patient, I haven't seen them, my client, I haven't seen them in a week. How's everything going? How was the week? Great. Did you do your homework? Great. Awesome. End of the session. I'll see you next week. Next week comes. The patient says, hey, my mother, my partner, my friend wants to sit in on our session. Is that okay? It's not detrimental to therapy. Yeah, sure. We're sitting in therapy, and the mom, the friend, the brother, they say, did you know that so-and-so got hospitalized last week? Oh, anyone? And you're like, what the hell? You could have told me that last week when we were meeting. They didn't want to tell you. They're doing one of these things. And now you have to start talking about that, right? If you're a DBT therapist, you have to start chaining why they didn't tell you that. So we get to coordinate care. And I like this idea that we're sending your patients to the hospital because they're suicidal, something's going on, it's necessary for them, the best level of intervention. And then I'm calling you and I'm saying, hey, Selena, did you know that we were out with your patient and what was best for them was to go to the hospital? So can you follow up with them? And you're going to say, yeah. Some people have said, great, I know where they're at. I'll go visit them, right, depending on what they're doing. All right, I'll follow up with them. Yeah, I didn't know that. It's a big one. Oh, you didn't know they were suicidal. Okay, some grist for the mill for therapy, right? We're also calling sometimes primary care doctors if there's not mental health professionals involved. So we can tell the primary care, hey, you may want to look at that person's treatment, their medications, something's not right. Okay, again, we're getting their whole care network on the same page about what's going on with this patient. We also have the ability to do some follow-up. I like this comic, the syndicated cartoonist Dan Pieraro, and this label fourth responders. This guy's showing up and says, hey, the accident was months ago and I fully recovered. He says, okay, cool. We have the ability to do some follow-up with these families. I met you on the side of the road last night. I spoke with you. You sent your daughter to the hospital. That was best for her. Good luck. Take care. They live in the mud, so we may never see them again. I feel like a part of what we're doing is taking back the responsibility of care for these families. Hey, is it okay if I speak to you in a week? I want to know what happened. Did you get what you need? You need referrals. You're not past that. Someone else's problem. We went to a training with Dr. John Jordan. He is a suicide kind of prevention guru. And he said this quote, "Postvention is prevention for future suicide." And so I'd like to think that in reaching out to these families, linking the families to services, helping them out, especially if their loved ones have acute suicidality or they're chronically suicidal, we're helping them to prevent future suicide, not only for their patient, their loved one, but for themselves. As you guys know, the statistics are also driven for family members of people who have someone who has completed suicide. Our risk goes up by like times 10. That's not good, right? Okay. Call to action. Again, this is coming from the Treatment Advocacy Center. Shifting the responsibility for responding to acutely ill individuals from mental health professionals to police has criminalized mental illness at enormous cost to individuals with the most severe psychiatric diseases. The criminal justice system in society. The mental illness treatment system must be restored sufficiently so those with mental illnesses receive treatment before their actions provoke a police response. Treatment Advocacy Center has done some research, and they said, and they found that someone with a mental illness has a 16 times greater chance of being shot and killed by police in an interaction with them. Conservatively, people with mental illness, all the officer-involved shootings in the nation, about a quarter of those shootings were with someone that had a mental illness. That's conservative, a quarter. The upper end of that is 50%. Of all police-involved shootings are with someone with a mental illness. That's too much, right? And I think we shift the responsibility back onto us, back onto me. Because I want to prevent this. I want to help our field restore what we're doing so we can be out here. And I guess the Treatment Advocacy Center's position is if we treat them appropriately, they won't provoke a police response.
I need to, there's a term for it, and I'm not remembering, but basically, someone who's suicidal calls 911 so that the police will come and provoke the police so that they can suicide.
Great point. That's called suicide by cop. And the police are very aware of that, and we have protocols in place that we attempt to prevent that. Again, we don't want anyone getting hurt. But some people will call the police and they will threaten them with knives, guns, they won't show them their hands, all these things. Again, police have this response where if you're presenting as dangerous, especially life-threatening danger, they have the ability to do something about that, which is important. And that's also on the rise. They're starting to track that now, by the way. So here's the vision I'd like to leave you guys with. I'd like to see mental health first responders have its own legs. Typically what happens is these police departments are like, you know what, I think we need something special like this. You're riding cars with us, and it's something that's kind of like brought in. I'd like for us to be a feel that this is not so niche, that it's something that is available to everyone, all counties, all people, having mental health experts going out into the field, on 911 calls, emergency calls, so we're available. That's the world I would like to live in. So with that, I'm going to be here for the rest of the conference for 2 days. If you guys want to chat and pull me aside, I have some business cards if you would like them. With that, thank you guys for your attention. We appreciate it.
Thank you.